Yeah?
Hello.
Hey.
What's up, guys? Yeah, snag a seat.
Go ahead.
Have you guys done this trail before?
No.
That's okay.
We were trail virgins. We just finished.
All you want.
Oh, you just finished.
Just
okay.
finished.
Which way did you go?
We started here, we went this way, and West Trail, East Trail.
Okay. The west one has those really steep kind of stairs.
Yes, as we learned,
Mm-hmm.
there were some steep components to it.
Yeah.
Yes. But we made it. We didn't
Congratulations.
think we were going to, but we did.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, if you'd like to put on those headphones, it's sort of a
All
good way
right.
to zone in. You've stumbled upon something called street epistemology.
Okay.
It's a way of having conversations that's very cordial, as you can see by the sign. And the focus is on your belief or claim that you have about the world. Usually it's something more supernatural, like belief in God or karma. People talk about politics, guardian angels. And I'll just sort of respectfully ask you questions about
Sure.
your reasons for believing. And at the end, you get a free little plush gear down there, too.
Nice. All right. Happy to chat with you cordially today.
Cool.
A nice Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, my name is Jacob, by the way. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Jacob. I'm Mark, and
Hey, Mark.
that's my buddy Rishi.
Hey, Rishi and Mark. Let me just pull up a new note on here so I can... Reed, would you help me make a new note on this?
There's the fat on the chair.
You can sit.
That's okay. I don't want to
Okay.
make you nervous.
So, my name was Jacob again. Can you remind me of yours one more time?
Sure. It's Mark. M-A-R-C.
Thanks, Mark. Does anything come to mind when I talk about sort of belief claims, things that are on your mind?
You know, the only thing that sort of struck a nerve was, you know, you said sometimes you talk politics.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Rishi and I, we are from Canada. And certainly, you know, we've been observing the American, I guess, political situation down here. And certainly in Canada, we have our own, you know, similar political climate. Maybe it's not as politicized as it is here, but certainly, certainly it is big news in Canada.
Yeah, isn't there an election?
We have a federal election coming up in 3 or 4 weeks, 3 weeks.
Cool.
And I know everybody, including Rishi and I, have opinions about that, and certainly we're hoping for a little bit of change down or up there, sort of similar to what you had down here
Okay.
in the U.S. You know, how much do you know about Justin Trudeau?
Probably only the biggest headlines that make it to the States.
Right. So what is? I'm curious about what the headlines in the U.S. are say about Justin, because certainly he was, you know, swept into power 6 years ago with you know, a new agenda, new image, you know, on the, you know, with the ideas for bold change, and certainly, you know, I think a number of Canadians might have been sort of let down by that, and now are looking for you know, a sort of fresh face. You know, that said, you know, the U.S. got a fresh face too, and you know, some good, some bad about there. I mean, certainly, you know, Donald Trump might not have been everybody's first choice as president, but certainly seeing the contrast with Joe Biden might change people's perspective on what was good and what wasn't, because certainly they are different. But you know, it is unfortunate, however, you know, that I think everything in today's society, even everything from COVID vaccines to anti-vax, you know, demonstrators to mask laws, everything has become politicized these days. And it seems like, you know, you can't have an opinion one way or the other without getting into an argument. There's no
When
more.
you say that everything's become politicized, do you mean that it's become like an object of contention?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you said you're, you know, anti-vaccine, well, you know, very quickly people jump to a, you know, conclusion that you're you know, a conservative or you're Republican, right? When you might just have an opinion that, you know, you don't think the vaccine is right, or vice versa, right? And you know, I think in this age of social media, especially, everything comes across as black and white, when in reality, you know, the truth in both things is probably somewhere in the middle, right? And you know, it's unfortunate that, you know, these days it's tough to have, you know, a healthy debate about anything, and to know what the truth is, because if you're Republican or you're conservative in Canada, then you're automatically thought to believe one thing, and if you're a liberal or a Democrat, you're automatically thought to be another thing, and it's tough to have especially on social media, an honest, truthful debate or discussion about anything without it getting very politicized, in my mind.
So, Mark, if I could like push a button on my
Sure.
little live stream here, hypothetically, and your microphone would transmit to every device across Canada for 1 minute. No, let's say 20 seconds.
Sure.
And on this topic specifically about the politicization of everything, you wanted to give some advice to every Canadian, let's just say North America.
Sure.
What would be your broadcast?
I think the ultimate message isn't to do this or to do that. I think everybody should have an open mind, right? And everyone should have an open mind and be honest and be open to other perspectives. Because certainly, North America is a small part of the world and everybody might have a perspective, but there are other, I don't want to say other truths out there, but again, other perspectives that everybody needs to consider. Everybody should make their own decision. Don't rely on, this media, that media, or what anybody else says. Make your own decision, but have an open mind without having any preconceived notions of anything.
Could you give an example of an issue where you'd rather see more open-minded discussion?
Well, I think, just broadly, I mean, when we have a federal election coming up, and, when I think about who to vote for, I think everybody shouldn't necessarily vote for specific, topics or specific beliefs that the leader has. I think you want to choose somebody that you can respect, that will make the right decision based on all the information they have, right? So somebody who doesn't say we should always do this or we should always do that. Someone who's just open-minded, because certainly I understand that, I think I'm a reasonably intelligent guy, but I certainly don't have the same perspective, the same knowledge, the same insight into all these issues that are facing us. And so, for me to say that anybody should, would be silly. So I'd love to vote for anybody who had an open mind and were willing to take the best thoughts of all the experts and then make what they think is the best decision. And even if I don't agree with that decision, then at least I can respect that decision because they've, again, approached it the right way, right? But again, going back to Canadian politics, I think, not to let my political view come through, but it's coming through now. Justin Trudeau, for example, he believes in a certain vision of Canada. And I think it's very narrow-minded, and he doesn't consider any other possibilities. And if you disagree with him, then, you're any number one of names. I don't want to say anything. And that becomes very divisive. And I don't think ultimately, that's the best way for, society or the economy or anything to operate. And I would certainly be happier to vote for a leader that, again, was more open-minded and had a broader perspective that rather than be narrow-minded. Because there's going to be things that come up that we can't predict, like COVID, that come up. And again, you want to have a leader, again, who doesn't have any preconceived notions about what to do or whatnot. They take all the best advice and they make the best possible decisions. And again, even if I don't agree with it, at least I can respect it then.
So just so I have a clear idea of what you're saying that kind of right now people are looking for a candidate where they know which way they're going to go on like an issue. For example, they're always pro X, Y, and Z, but against this. Right,
and just from my perspective, if you're Republican, then you always agree with the Republican perspective. If you're a Democrat, you always agree with the Democratic perspective. And again, the best route and the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But because if you believe in Donald Trump, then you believe in X, Y, and Z. If you believe in Joe Biden, you believe in A, B, C, D. And I think people are too ingrained in their stance and again not open-minded enough to consider that there's other perspectives out there, right? Even if you're a Democrat, a Republican can have a good a good idea, and even if you're a Republican, not all Democrats are hippies who believe in whatever. There are good ideas. Good ideas come from everywhere, and we all need to be sort of open-minded to that possibility.
Yeah. So it kind of sounds like this politicization that you're talking about before can happen not just with issues, but also with groups of people, where just because I am a Republican or I am a Democrat,
sure,
I sort of feel like I always have to be taking the Democratic position on every issue.
Right.
Whereas you wish that not just Justin Trudeau, but everybody would consider, the best points that the Republicans and Democrats make about every issue?
Yeah, just be open-minded. I mean, there's lots of smart people out there in any industry, on every political party, and again, we'd all be silly not to keep our ears and eyes open for different ideas that could help improve everybody's lives, right?
So if I came at you with a very narrow-minded perspective, and let's say I said, totally disagree. I think that we should all be standing our ground because politics is about the tug of war and finding the compromise. And so maybe we should all just stay entrenched in our beliefs, and hopefully the society as a whole might land in the middle. What would be your best counter-argument to somebody with that kind of view about it?
I believe in being open-minded, and so, I believe in my beliefs and what I think, but I could agree that maybe that might work out. And so I would say, being a Canadian, if that's what Americans wanted to do in their country, all right.
So you came at this so open-mindedly that you even would just accept this position.
Well, yeah, because I think, obviously I've expressed my perspective on how things are, but again, I don't believe that necessarily I'm the smartest guy in the room, and there might be other perspectives and other reasons why that you think that way. And, if we were sitting down having a beer, we could, why do you think that? I mean, what, and maybe you can convince me. And if I can be convinced, then sure. Right.
So is there a virtue in being so open-minded that you could even be convinced to be more closed-minded?
Yeah, I think ultimately, like even in our business, when we have employees or staff meetings, I want everybody's idea. I want to hear everybody's idea. I mean, everybody can have one. Again, good ideas come from all sorts of places, but ultimately, for my team, we're a democracy until I make a decision, and then everybody better be on the same page, right? So I'm open-minded, but once a decision has to be made, if there's a specific issue, then we make that decision, and we're all on the same page. And if we're not, then you're on the wrong team, right? But
so even in the stance of being more open-minded, there's still nuance about that.
Yeah, I think so. And going back to again, I can respect a leader who makes a decision, even if I don't agree with it, if I think they've gone through the right process. If they've taken all the information, they've weighed it out, they've talked to their experts, they make a decision on COVID. If they decide we need to be locked down for a year and everybody stays in the house, okay, if you can show me the science behind that, okay, good. Then I don't agree with it, maybe. I want to be free, but I can see why you made that decision. All right, so...
let's use our little visual metaphor to help here. Let's say that on the far left of this, we're talking about politics,
Sure.
So ignore the left and right. Let's just
Sure.
say that that's a coincidence that this goes left to right. Let's say on the far left, this would be everybody should be totally closed-minded about everything.
Okay.
And on the far right, let's say everybody should always keep a totally open mind about everything. Where would you put your needle, and as a follow-up, where do you think we should all be?
Well, not to be too neutral about it, but probably somewhere in the middle. Right? I think we all need, but the caveat to that is, again, as we talked about, I think you can be closed-minded or you can be open-minded. At the end of the day, a decision needs to be made, right? And I don't say we should be open-minded, so we need to take in every single perspective from every single person and talk about it endlessly. But we can be open-minded, but a decision needs to get made, right? And so as long as we're not open-minded forever, or then I'd probably lean towards this way. But again, it's not in perpetuity.
And where do you think that the state of American politics is right now?
I'd probably say there, right? I think everybody is closed-minded. And I think, I love social media as much as the next person, but I think we've all been on Twitter, for example, and if you comment somebody, everybody's going to jump all over you from the opposite perspective, no matter what you say. You could say the sky is blue, and somebody would say, "Are you an idiot? Over there, it's white. Don't you know it's actually gray?" Whatever. And I think it's just it's a hard way to live when everybody is so black and white. And it does go back to the whole mental well-being and all that, because if you're getting beaten up all the time, it's tough, right? If you don't feel heard, it's tough, right? So,
great. Well, I feel like you've laid out not just your stance on it, but also what a counterpoint of that could be. Talking about maybe there's, in a practical term, too much open-mindedness, that you never land on your feet on any stance whatsoever.
Well, while we're talking about things, I'll say one more thing.
Go for it.
An opinion. about the whole, especially in the U.S., but especially in Canada as well, the whole Black Lives Matter, racism, all all those things, right?
Don't do it.
No, I think there are problems for sure in Canada and the United States that we could all do better on. There is no dispute about that. But people in Canada and the US have it better than anywhere else in the world, right? And you know, if you are an African American here and you try to, you know, certainly there are things that are systemically against you here. I don't dispute that. Is there racism here? Absolutely. But try being an African American in China or Japan or Russia. It is far worse there, right? Try being a white person in Kenya or whatever. There's racism there too. And so, you know, it gets a lot of news about what goes on in the United States and what goes on in Canada. But there's more tolerance here than anywhere else in the world, right? And again, if you try to, you know, I've you know, traveled a lot. And if you tried, you know, in Japan, you can't even have a Catholic church, right? They're not allowed. In China, you can't either. If you were a black person in China, you'd be subject to far worse than anything you could have here. And if you talk about opportunities, there's no opportunities over there, right? And it's not to say it's good or wrong. It's just different. And I think people should recognize that in North America, from a race perspective, you know, there's more tolerance here than anywhere else in the world. But because we're so caught up in everything here and it's become such an issue, I don't know if people necessarily recognize that. So that's just my 2 cents.
So if I'm understanding, you think that so all of this talk about Black Lives Matter, the current social movement there, sort of lacks a wider perspective about maybe how far we've come?
Right. And certainly, you know, I'm not obviously African American, so again, they might have, you know, a different perspective. And certainly there's things that we can do better in Canada and the United States. And that's where we live. And we always want to strive to do better for all races, right? But as you say, from a broader, wider perspective, we have it better in North America than anywhere else in the world, right? And I don't think enough people recognize that, and they should. And you know, I could go on. You know, I mean, even my kids. Then, you know, I want them. They grew up in Toronto, and you know, Toronto's, you know, first world nation, obviously, or first world city. But I try to expose them to as many different cultures from around the world, because Canada's a small place in the bigger scheme of things. You know, there's lots of different cultures and different ways to live and different ways to tackle problems. And you know, I don't want them to just be sheltered in their first world Toronto bubble, because it's a big world out there. And you know, there's issues out there, or you know, we all say first world problems that we have that are in the big scheme of things not very important. And again, different ways that we can tackle how we get along with each other, you know, how we are as a society, and so it's important for me to make sure that they're exposed to different countries, different cultures, different opportunities even, right?
So we are kind of like approaching the end of the interview, just so you know. I know that you've got places to be. If you could brainstorm with me maybe like an alternative hypothetical situation in politics in America, where we woke up tomorrow and the world was in such a way that you might change your stance on this issue. For example, you know, you talk about comparing America to lesser developed nations, like, you know, places where they don't have as many freedoms socially, politically. How far would America need to decline socially before those comparisons became irrelevant? If somebody said, you know, America needs to be this bad.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily categorize it as bad or decline. You know, for all the, you know, issues that we sort of touched on or talked about here, all those countries have their own issues as well, right? They might have different issues, and so I don't necessarily think, you know, Canada or the U.S. is better or worse than those. I mean, it's just different. And certainly, you know, you know, if countries want to run a certain way or have their economy a certain way and have different rights and freedoms, you know, I don't necessarily think that, you know, we as, you know, Canadians, Americans, whatever, necessarily need to be involved or, again, say it's better or worse. It's not our business to do that. And I think, when we start saying we're better, we're worse, they should do this, they should do that, it's a very dangerous situation because, a lot of those, societies have been around a lot longer than us. They've figured out a way to make it work. And if their citizens are happy, then, if they're better or worse, if they're happy, then they're happy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to take up too much of your time or go off on too far of a tangent, but even, things like the Me Too movement. Certainly we're all about, making women feel feel comfortable and feel happy, and and certainly their opinion is more important. But when we start to take our standards of how we treat people and apply them to other societies, that becomes very dangerous, because every society is different. They all have their own cultural norms, their own values, and certainly for us to say as Canadians or as Americans that you should be doing it this way, you should respect what we do here, is not right either.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And again, sort of going back to sort of being open-minded, and I think understanding that different countries, different cultures are just different, not better, not worse, not something we need to apply our rules to. They're just different. And so again, I wouldn't categorize America as having to get better or worse to be equal to those other countries. They're just different, right?
Gotcha. I feel like I'm understanding that it's not so much on a spectrum of better to worse. It's just that because each country has its own different story of how it came to
Right.
be and different values, it's hard to compare apples to oranges.
Right. Obviously I'm from an Asian background, and we were just talking about this with my mom the other day. So in North America, when your parents get old, maybe you put them into a retirement home or an old age home. But from my culture and my mom and her parents always all just live with the kids, right? And nobody's ever, the idea of sending your mom to an old age home or retirement home is just mind-blowing to them.
Mm-hmm.
Not better or worse, it's just different, right? And we've had people, my mom lives with me now. People say to me, how can your mom live with you? You're a grown man, she's a grown woman, you should be living on your own. Well, that's not the way I look at it, right? I enjoy living with my mom. I mean, there's some, day-to-day goods and bads, but, it's almost like an honor to be able to look after your parents. They looked after us for a long time, and so I don't see it as cramping my style, and thankfully neither does my girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, again, not better or worse, just I think another way that, societies are different, and we all need to be open-minded to how other folks, live even day to day, month to month, year to year.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mark, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thanks so much for having me. This was always fun.
Yeah,
Cross podcast off my bucket list.
sure. You left a lot of meat on the table for us to chew on.
I'll leave that for the next hiker.
Yeah. We're out here some Sundays, depending on which location we happen to be at. But if you
Nice.
take a card, you can follow our socials and
All right.
even schedule a follow-up interview if you want to continue where we left off.
I just flew in this morning, and we're out in a couple days. Thought we'd come for a hike, but I'll check this out, and you never know.
Okay.
All right,
Thanks, Rishi.
like a puzzle piece like this.
Yeah, whichever
Yeah.
color you decide.
That's okay. I'll leave those with you. I'll take a sticker though. Oh, I like the sticker, but I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with the puzzle piece. All right.
Thank you.